Welcome to Community Chats, bringing you stories and insights from the heart of Community Living Toronto, a nonprofit organization that proudly supports people with intellectual disabilities and their families. We will focus on stories of belonging and inclusion and topics of interest from communities across Ontario and the world. From uplifting moments to breaking barriers, from innovative policies to ideas from leading thinkers, we continue to advocate for inclusive communities and support the rights and choices of people with an intellectual disability.
Community Chats are Community Living Toronto's way of sharing our stories, inspiring each other, and learning about what is happening in our community across Canada and around the world. Today, we're having a conversation with Nadia, a volunteer, small business owner, immigrant to Canada, sister of Amir, and a passionate advocate. Coming from a self-described family of hustlers, Nadia shares her story, giving some insights into her role as a sister. We talk about developing a person-directed plan, how her family inspired Amir's interest in business, how Passport was used by Amir to pursue his passion, become a volunteer, and the role of social media and how it can help bring people together. We touch on zodiac signs, people who have supported her family on their journey, and her hopes for the future, as well as how things have changed and how she's seen them change since coming to Canada from Egypt in the 1970s. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did.
So Nadia, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
You were one of our 75th anniversary storytellers, but your connection with Community Living Toronto goes back before that, so we'll get into that. But maybe you could start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your family and your connection to us.
Sure. Well, like you all said, thank you so much. My name is Nadia El-Kharadli. I am the firstborn child of a family of four of Egyptian Canadian immigrants. My parents came here in the mid-70s. I was born in 1980, and then a mess of brothers came after me. So there's three brothers after me, and Amir is the youngest. Amir has been a community living client for as long as I can remember. When I was younger, it was my parents, obviously, that kind of looked after his education and worked very, very hard to ensure he got whatever opportunities that we could get for him. And obviously, community living played very heavily in that. His job coach, Cynthia, who I believe is now retired, was basically a member of our family. She was incredible in guiding him through work experience. I know that was a big thing for him. You know, we're kind of a family of hustlers. My dad's an entrepreneur. He's owned his own business for as long as we can remember. You know, we've all worked in various jobs, and for a long time, that was Amir's focus, was getting work experience and, you know, working in jobs where he was engaged and excited and interested in what he was doing. And as he got older and as, you know, kind of the climate changed and he watched, you know, my dad move more into an entrepreneurial role, and he watched my brothers and I kind of experiment in that field as well. You know, we all had full-time jobs for the most part, but he would see us doing our side hustles and different things. So he's been very passionate and engaged about kind of the idea of work and business in general. So kind of where I came back into the community living fold was as my parents were getting older, and obviously the landscape is changing, and going back a bit, you know, kind of about our background, obviously having a 9 to 5 full-time job is the goal, is the dream, especially for that generation and for every generation. We all need to eat, we all need to make money. But, you know, as someone who became used to not just having one job, you know, I had a full-time job, but I would also do things on the side. You know, now I help with the family business. I do my own, you know, various things as well. But, you know, having that mindset of, yes, this is great that he has this full-time job. You know, my parents did a wonderful job getting him into a company that he's been in for several years now, and he's done very well, but he still had that fire under him, that kind of passionate vibe of really wanting to see what that my own business idea was like. So I saw that in him. I saw him, you know, not, I think, feeling as stimulated as he wanted to with regards to work, and still wanting to obviously make our family happy, be responsible. So I actually reached out to a friend of mine, Marwa, who was working with you guys at Community Living for a long time, and bless her, she connected me with Angela. And Angela, as we know, is a superstar from the jump when she got on this call. Her star status came and shone on all of us. So she and I had a bunch of wonderful chats about this. This was all during the pandemic, a time where many people, got a vibe where they wanted to maybe
Yeah,
experiment
for
and
sure.
do other things in life. Amir was no exception. And I think that that's a big part of both what I've learned about my journey watching him and supporting him, and also learning so much more from community living, is that part of this whole idea of belonging and creating these pathways for individuals like my brother is to recognize that just because they have their challenges, just because they have their differences, as we all do, doesn't mean that they're exempt from the same passions and dreams and wants that the more neurotypical of us may have. So that
Yeah,
was something that I reached out to Angela, and she connected me with Nick and Petra, and we went through the person-directed planning process with Amir. So we done a similar kind of a Zoom about that, talking about his experience with that. He actually got to be present with me on that one, and he loved that process. We even did a business canvas, which, as someone who's done my own kind of business work and different incubators and things, like, I've had to do a business canvas. So it was really impressive to me to watch him go through that process, and to just see how, I mean, this may sound strange, but how seriously everyone took the process. Like, it was like he went through his personal business incubator. It was that he had people who were taking him seriously. They were listening to what he was excited about, what he was interested in. Is he still learning the lingo? Is he still learning to, express exactly what he wants? Is he even still figuring out what he wants? Absolutely. But seeing how he was, it was just so authentically received and supported, was just really incredible. And then from the person directed planning, I believe Cynthia had already applied for the passport funding for
right.
him previous to that, but then that kind of again came over to me, and I was like, okay, how can we, now that we've done this plan, leverage this funding that we have to do something for him? So he even was looking at job coaches, business coaches, because again, that was Cynthia's title for so
Right.
long. And she was such a, wonderful, beacon of support for him for all those years. So we actually found him an entrepreneurship coach, who was actually a
Oh,
friend of
wow.
mine who has experience with the Learning Disabilities Association of Ontario.
Hmm.
She's diagnosed with a learning disability as well as I believe, neurodivergence ADHD as well. So she's very used to advocating for herself, number one, working through having to learn your own way and your own methods. And she just has such a great way, with Amir. Like, he's creating NFTs now. He's got a Shopify store. Like, he's a hustler. He's
Wow.
Gaming is his thing. That was what he wanted to get into. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. He knows that. And so, yeah, that was the
Finding a
journey.
place for himself. And
Not only finding a place for himself, but really showing the rest of us
yeah,
that he has a right to finding that place and to seeking that
mhm,
place, and that his drive should be as respected and supported as any of ours.
right.
So that's what he taught us.
So, and you touched there, and you spoke about another superstar, sort of uh, Petra, who just retired from our organization. She
What
sort
are
of,
you guys doing
I
without, like,
know,
these stars? You have just sit on them. Don't
I
let them
know,
leave.
I know.
I'm
So
looking at
the
you,
person,
Angela.
yeah, the person directed planning process is something that she was very passionate about, very good at, and did hundreds of them over the years. There's Angela blushing a little bit, waving at me.
Oh,
Um, so uh, um, it's great to hear that, because a lot of times those plans happen. You draw a lot of stuff on the walls, you
uh-huh.
brainstorm ideas, and people participate. But it's nice to hear that from that process and from that experience, your brother was able to find a passion and narrow it down and get people on side, and really make it happen
Well, I
for
have to
himself.
say, I don't know what the general experience of individuals going through that process, but my brother, he's a Taurus. I don't know if anybody's astrology familiar, but they are the bull. And he, exactly, Angela gets it. She knows my brother as well. And he is literally like bull by the horns. If he has something in his mind, he is going to charge and he wants to do it. He will not let it
Right.
go. And power to him. I wish I had that kind of dedication, but he was gung ho about turning his dream into a reality, whatever that looked like. And as someone who, I've had pie in the sky dreams too. And like I said, I'm always someone with different projects on the go. I was like, cool, this is your dream. Let's figure it out.
Good.
Like, why
Good.
not?
Now you were generous enough to share a story with us for our 75th anniversary, and I'm just going to read a quote from your
Oh
story,
gosh. You guys
and then
already almost got me crying with the passport funding story. So if I start now, I apologize in advance. I don't remember what I
no
said, but I feel
worry,
like it's
no
cute.
worry. You can become verklempt, and we won't matter. It
Oh
won't matter
God.
at all. So, a quote from your story is: "When you think about a family member with any sort of challenge, be it physical, mental, or whatever, belonging is the biggest challenge because they're trying to move through a world that was not built for them." So you mentioned here that your family emigrated to Canada in the 70s, and
Yeah.
you were born in Canada and have lived
Yeah.
here since since you were born.
Mhm.
Um,
Literally.
and so
Not
you've seen
saying
some.
when that was.
You already did. You already said 1980. I'll
Damn.
remind. It's okay. But age is
You
good.
got me.
Better than the alternative. How do you feel about accessibility and inclusion today, as perhaps your parents experienced it when they first came, or your experience growing up the last couple of decades, as seen through your eyes and also through your brothers?
I mean, a whirlwind may be too intense, but it's definitely in waves. It's very up and down. I feel like especially recently, post COVID, I think we saw a really, really strange kind of going back to a real selfishness and a lack of understanding of people not really wanting to be concerned about people with whether it was their health special needs, wearing masks became such a drama. So on that front, it was kind of a reminder that, since the 70s and 80s and, when my brother was first diagnosed and they were thinking that he wouldn't be as high functioning as he is and wouldn't get as far as he is, like he went to college, he graduated high school, like they didn't think that, as far as I remember, that those things were a possibility for him. So he obviously broke all the barriers that were initially set for him. So definitely on the one hand, that's the whirlwind, right? Like he was given at, because of my parents and their advocacy for him, and then now because of his own advocacy and my advocacy as well, he was given a lot of opportunities. He was given a lot of chances to access that belonging, whether it was through special education programs or volunteer programs. Like he's a superstar volunteer. He would love to do all these different things from the Pan Am Games, the Indigenous Games. I
Right.
think he did, what was that one where Prince Harry met Meghan?
Invictus.
That's the one. He was there. That's the only reason I know about those games. Is that not sad? But he was there. I know bit them because of my brother as well. So again, there was a lot. It was wonderful seeing him get those opportunities, and is because obviously value and community, or sorry, belonging and community are strong values within our community here at large, Ontario. But I still have moments where exactly like what I said, this is a world. Yeah, Angela Pan Am, both the Pan Ams. I think he's done Special O as well, some stuff there. Angela would know better than me. Like those two are besties. Like if you see them at a community living Toronto event, like they're both just off networking in either corner. Like Angela and Amir are the stars. But, there's still challenges. The world is still not fully, built for any, I'm somewhat neurodiverse as well. And I notice it even in just the way I had to deal with life when I was younger, as well as being a grown up, air quotes grown up, and trying to still navigate the world and understand where my challenges may come from. So layer on top of that, what my brother had dealt with, you do see the gaps still. So to answer your question, I still believe that it's up and down. However, I definitely also know that I can be a bit jaded and a bit negative sometimes, I've been told. So I do think that the frequency of belonging and the ability to connect and belong and have those moments of community far outnumber the challenges. And
Well,
that
that's
is the
that's good to
shift
hear.
that Yeah, and that's the shift that's been happening, even though they still remain. And we should definitely not rest on our laurels thinking
Yeah.
that we're done and everyone's equal and being treated the same. We're not there yet. Again, to me, I think COVID was a really harsh reminder of like, oh, there are some folks out there that we really still need to reach, or some folks that we lost along the way and need to get them back now, whatever the
Yeah.
case may
Yeah.
be. But that being said, if I were to really step back and zoom out, the overall landscape is shifting more into that positive direction for
Right.
sure.
So I wanted to, that's a great answer, and good to hear that sort of your observation of that that journey. Still many gaps, but progress has definitely been made.
Mhm,
One of the new areas around community and engagement that we've seen in the last couple decades, the last decade in particular, is sort of social media and community
mhm.
and the relation there. And you're involved in that in a professional sense, right? You do a
I
lot
am.
of social media activities. At Community
I
Living
do.
Toronto, we've been trying to build out and strengthen this as a new way of building community, building belonging. We're on all of the
Absolutely.
kind of major platforms. We're doing things like this where we're chatting with people and doing webinars, and we're starting to
Right.
record them and sort of do more of a podcast format. Can you
Love
maybe
it.
give us some, and there's always a question, why would you do this? Is it worth the effort? Is it real community? Can you give us your perspective on our efforts there, and maybe some sense for people listening as to the importance of that, or what's your experience been?
Oh gosh, it's paramount. Like important doesn't even begin to cover it. I think that it's a generational thing getting people on side with the idea that it's still community and it's still connection, even though it's through a digital um, mechanism. You
Mhm.
know, I come from a family of engineers and communicators, so telecommunications, social media, like we slid right in. And, you know, like my mom is a champ texter. She's all over Facebook. She has more Instagram followers than I do. Like it's in the genes, it's in the fabric. We get it. But from a professional as well as just a general belonging and community standpoint, social media is a way to bring people together that really removes so many barriers. So if you're talking about someone like me, who a lot of my family is overseas, Facebook, Instagram, either WhatsApp, even if you want to think of that as a social media platform, without these tools, I wouldn't be able to, you know, be in contact with family that's far away as regularly. You know, like, I remember being young and my mom writing letters, you know, and having to save that one phone call. So for just a way to connect with people in a way that's more consistent, in a way that can be more poignant and heartfelt because you're getting the visual, you're getting the sound, you're getting all of that. It's so impressive and so important for that that we've been able to come that far as a society that we're bridging these long distance gaps. And from a storytelling perspective, it's also absolutely paramount and immense. Without, you know, the way that social media has given people the tools to share their own stories, their own experiences, and to connect that way. I can't think of another time in history that we've had that. And, you know, going back to what you were saying about from a professional standpoint, like it's a metric now that, you
Yeah.
know, from the community living perspective, if you're, you know, I think when you had our pre-meeting for this, we talked about lobbying and the impact of storytelling and lobbying, and fundraising and lobbying are two sides of the same coin. Fundraising is obviously an aspect here, but also just general awareness. So for community living, an organization like you dealing with such a vulnerable population where not everyone may have a family member who is part of that population like I do, so they may not have that personal connection to care and be engaged. But, you know, people watch TikToks about puppies and kittens, and they may not have a puppy and kitten at home, but
Yeah.
it's something that is part of that human experience. It pulls on the heartstrings. It tickles those empathy, you know,
It draws
feels you have
draws draws
inside.
draws people in.
It
Yeah.
draws people
It
in. And,
we
you know,
it
talking about the lack of connection people had during COVID, or that lack of understanding people had, you know, what was the big thing we were focused on during COVID? It was numbers, it was
Yeah.
metrics, it was black and white. And I think that was an area where we lost a lot of people. So if you bring it back to what's the importance of social media, I think it really is that human storytelling aspect where you add color, you're adding breath to, and you're adding life to an idea much more than black and white
So
numbers on the page.
thinking of social media and these various platforms as a tool to build on and engage and further engage people
Mhm.
with each other, not
And
as a
share.
substitute for community, but as an augmentation to
Absolutely.
it.
It's another way. It's not
Yeah,
a separate way
it's
to
not a replacement
communicate. It's
for.
just a different way to
Right.
communicate. Yeah.
Right. That's great. We talked the other day about the campaign that the sector's been on,
Mhm.
our hashtag 5 to Survive campaign, right?
Mhm.
And we had an online digital petition that we signed that got, so I think we're up to about 12,000
That's great.
signatures, which is amazing. And I was at a lunch last week with the Minister of Finance and stood in line to say hello and
Handshake.
all
Yep.
that. And he, as soon as he saw me, he said, I know about your 5 to Survive campaign, and
And I saw the numbers of the
good. Yeah, saw
petition.
that. Yeah. So I mean, it does have an impact. So
Oh, for sure.
what?
And I think that goes to show the different audiences. Sorry to interrupt you, Brad.
Yeah.
There's definitely still the individuals that will look at the metrics and look at the numbers
Yeah.
and need to know that. But there is so much value to that storytelling because of the way that, human beings can't wrap their heads around the idea of tens of thousands of
Yeah.
people, but they can very easily wrap their heads around
One
this
story.
face, this family,
Yes. Yeah.
like there's things that everyone can relate to, whether they've experienced them or not. And it's that personalization, that personification
So
that
people
adds it.
being willing to share those stories and make themselves a
Yes.
little vulnerable, put them out there.
Yep.
And we've had people do that as part of this campaign, and as our 75th
Yeah. Right
anniversary
here.
piece. Your family being one of them. We're
Yeah.
just one final question as we
Sure.
wrap things up. As you know, our 75th anniversary was all about belonging, and you've talked about sort of your experience with inclusion and how that's played out. But what does belonging mean to you?
Belonging to me is just that feeling of safety and comfort and care that comes with knowing that you're part of a community, knowing that people have your back, knowing that you're not going to be turned away for being a certain way, saying a certain thing, looking a certain way. I leverage that word so much more than inclusion lately. Part of the work that I do is equity, the legacy acronym, diversity, equity, and inclusion. But
Yeah.
I've started to focus much more about belonging and justice, because to me justice is the big part, what the big guys can do, the governments, large organizations. Belonging is the piece that we can contribute to as individuals, because that's what we give each other, right? Bringing someone into a fold, making someone feel welcome. The idea of inclusion was just, okay, you may look different than the usual people we hire, or whatever the case may be. We're going to open the door and bring you on in anyway. But inclusion stops there. Inclusion
Right.
stops at, we've just brought you in. Belonging picks up after that, and making people stay, making people feel comfortable enough to stay where they are. And then that just perpetuates to bringing more people in. And because you're seeing that authenticity, that real comfort, that real safety of knowing that they feel like they belong, like
Great.
that's the real difference. And that's the type of thing that I want everyone, from my brother, every community living client, every person on this planet, we all deserve to feel that.
Great way to end. Thanks.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for your support for us over the years. Thanks for Amir for all the stuff he's contributed
My
to, and thanks for
pleasure.
taking time this afternoon. Really appreciate it.
Anytime. Thank you all for all the amazing work that you do.
Belonging means many things to many people. That feeling of safety, comfort, and care, knowing that you are part of a community. And what a great message around belonging and justice. We will be sharing more of these conversations, and we'd love your feedback. Please leave a comment on wherever you get your podcast from, rate us on YouTube, and please subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Have a great day. Thanks for listening.
Don't forget to join us next time as we unpack the power of community through collaborative initiatives and shared experiences. Available on Buzzsprout, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, and YouTube. Follow us on social media at CL Toronto. Let's chat, share, and spread those good vibes together. We hope these discussions will inspire you and give new ideas to add your voice to our mission of making our communities and neighborhoods inclusive and welcoming.